You know that feeling when you think you know someone better than they know themselves? When you're so sure about your future together that you'd bet your entire life on it. Well, buckle up, because I'm about to tell you a story that'll make you question everything you thought you knew about love, loyalty, and the promises we make when we're young and foolish. This is the story of James and Joanna, childhood sweethearts who seemed destined for forever. But sometimes, destiny has other plans. And sometimes, the person you die for is the same person who'll leave you to drown. Picture this. You're 22, fresh out of college, and the love of your life just won the biggest award in your field. Everyone's congratulating you because obviously where she goes, you go. You've been inseparable since you were kids. But then she looks you in the eye and says the words that'll haunt you for the next 7 years. He deserves this opportunity more than you do. That's exactly what happened to James when Joanna chose Kevin, some random exchange student, over him for the opportunity of a lifetime. But here's where it gets really twisted. 7 years later, James comes back as a successful architect, and Joanna thinks he's come crawling back for her. Plot twist, he's married. Let me take you back to where this whole mess started. James and Joanna weren't just any couple, they were the couple. Born in the same year, same month, practically joined at the hip since they were babies. If you saw James, Joanna was within 3 feet of him, guaranteed. They shared their first chocolate, their first fight, their first everything. College was their golden era. While other couples were breaking up over stupid stuff, James and Joanna were the power couple everyone envied. She was the once-in-a-decade design genius, sweeping every award in sight. He was the creative visionary with a gift for spatial concepts that professors raved about. They were like the architectural equivalent of Beyoncé and Jay-Z, individually brilliant, but together, unstoppable. Or so everyone thought. Enter Kevin. Now, this guy wasn't your typical villain. He was quiet, unassuming, the kind of student who kept his head down and worked twice as hard as everyone else. But here's what James didn't see coming. Kevin was studying more than just architecture. He was studying Joanna. It started innocently enough. Kevin would point out flaws in Joanna's proposals, offer helpful suggestions, score just half a point behind her in competitions. Everyone joked about how he was catching up to James's girl. But Kevin wasn't trying to catch up academically. He was positioning himself as Joanna's intellectual equal, something James had always taken for granted. You see, James grew up with Joanna. To him, their connection was as natural as breathing. But Kevin? Kevin had to fight for every moment of her attention, every shared project, every late-night study session. And that hunger, that desperate need to prove himself worthy, made him dangerous in ways James never anticipated. The turning point came during their senior year. Kevin's hard drive crashed. All his files, all his backups, everything gone right before graduation. Was it an accident? James still wonders. All he knows is that Joanna spent countless nights helping Kevin rebuild everything from scratch, staying up until dawn, pouring her heart into saving his academic future. Meanwhile, James watched from the sidelines as Joanna slowly drifted away. The girl who used to fight bullies for mocking his blueprints was now treating him like he was the problem. When he tried to warn her about Kevin, she dismissed his concerns. When he pointed out inconsistencies in Kevin's story, she accused him of being jealous. The final blow came when Joanna won the Golden Sale Award, the Oscar of Young Architecture. Starry River Design Institute, the most prestigious firm in the industry, offered her a position and sweetened the deal by letting her bring one partner. Everyone assumed it would be James. The congratulations started pouring in before Joanna even made her decision. But then came that devastating conversation. James, Starry River is Kevin's dream starting point. He needs this opportunity more than you do. Just like that, 20 years of friendship, 4 years of romance, and a lifetime of shared dreams crumbled. The spot that everyone thought belonged to James went to the exchange student who'd been there for barely 2 years. Joanna tried to soften the blow. She signed James up with a smaller firm in the South, promising they'd get married once the project was approved. She probably thought she was being practical, looking out for his best interests. But James saw it for what it really was, betrayal wrapped in the guise of protection. So he did the unthinkable. The boy who couldn't go half a day without Joanna packed his bags and flew overseas without a word. No goodbye, no explanation, no forwarding address. Just gone. Now, here's where most people would expect the story to end with James drowning in self-pity, maybe drinking himself to death in some foreign country. But James had something most people don't: spite-fueled determination. You know what they say about the best revenge being success? James took that philosophy and ran with it. He threw himself into his work with the intensity of someone who had nothing left to lose. He studied under a Pritzker Prize winner, developed groundbreaking concepts in avant-garde architecture, and slowly built a reputation that reached across continents. While Joanna and Kevin were climbing the corporate ladder at Starry River, James was revolutionizing international architecture forums. While they were winning domestic awards, his Museum of Light and Shadow was taking gold at international competitions. While they were building their perfect life together, James was building an empire. But success doesn't erase the past, does it? 7 years later, a chance encounter at JFK Airport brought it all rushing back. Some former classmate recognized James and started gushing about his relationship with Joanna, asking about their marriage, their life together. The poor woman had no idea she was poking at a wound that had never fully healed. That night on the plane, James couldn't escape the memories. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Joanna's face, heard her voice, felt the weight of 20 years of shared history pressing down on his chest. The boy who'd once planned to marry his childhood sweetheart was now flying toward a life she knew nothing about. The reunion was inevitable. Small world, smaller industry. James found himself face-to-face with Joanna at a restaurant, and time seemed to stop. She looked exactly like he'd imagined, polished, successful, still carrying that untouchable elegance that had first captivated him. But there was something else in her eyes when she saw him. Something desperate and hungry. Kevin was there too, playing the protective boyfriend, marking his territory like he'd won some grand prize. And maybe he had. After all, he was the one who got to stand beside Joanna all these years. He was the one who built a career alongside hers, who shared her triumphs and failures, who got to call her his. But here's what Kevin didn't understand, and what Joanna was about to learn the hard way: James hadn't come back for her. The stalking started immediately. Joanna parked outside James's hotel night after night, just sitting there like some lovesick teenager. During the day, she'd follow his car, desperate for any sign that the boy who once worshipped her still existed somewhere inside the successful man he'd become. When James finally confronted her, the conversation was brutal. "You're so cruel," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. But James had learned cruelty from the best teacher: heartbreak. "I don't miss you," he told her, and meant every word. "I came back purely for work. Running into you was pure coincidence. If I could avoid it, I would." The truth was even more devastating than Joanna could have imagined. James revealed that he had come back once before, 3 months after leaving. Homesick and heartbroken, he'd flown all the way back to find her, ready to apologize, ready to forgive everything. But what he found in that parking garage destroyed any chance of reconciliation forever. Joanna and Kevin, wrapped in each other's arms, kissing like lovers who'd been separated for years instead of months. The image burned itself into James's memory, and with it, any lingering hope that Joanna had been suffering the way he was. "You say you missed me," James told her, his voice cold as winter. "But in 7 years, you never once reached out. You never asked how I survived in a foreign country, never cared what I was doing.
You didn't love me."
You loved the version of yourself that loved me deeply. But the real knockout punch was yet to come. When their old friends tried to guilt James into reconciling with Joanna, when they painted him as the heartless villain who'd abandoned his true love, James dropped the bomb that silenced everyone. "I'm married." The words hit the room like a physical blow. All those years of Joanna waiting, all those assumptions about James pining away for his lost love, all those romantic notions about childhood sweethearts finding their way back to each other, shattered in 2 simple words. James pulled out his wedding ring, sliding it onto his finger like armor. The platinum band covered the faint mark that remained, and with it, covered any possibility of going backward. Joanna collapsed, literally and figuratively, begging him to say it was a lie, that he was just trying to hurt her. But it wasn't a lie. 2 years earlier, James had found something he'd thought was impossible after Joanna: real love. Not the desperate, all-consuming obsession of youth, but mature, stable partnership with someone who saw him for who he'd become, not who he used to be. His wife, Lillian, knew nothing about the drama unfolding back home. To her, James was simply a brilliant architect attending a conference. She sent him sweet messages, photos of their dog, reminders that she was waiting for him to come home. Simple, uncomplicated love. Everything his relationship with Joanna had never been. The story doesn't end there, though. Because some stories don't get happy endings, even for the winners. Years later, James received news that Joanna had died suddenly, cardiac arrest after days of working on a proposal. Kevin, lost without her, crashed his car in a drunken stupor and fell into a coma. When asked if he'd attend Joanna's funeral, James's answer was swift and final: no. And that was it. The end of a love story that began in childhood and died in a parking garage 7 years too late. Now, I know what you're thinking. Was James too harsh? Should he have forgiven Joanna? Was Kevin really the villain, or just another victim of impossible circumstances? Here's the thing: there are no clean heroes and villains in real life. Joanna wasn't evil. She was young and made a choice that seemed logical at the time. Kevin wasn't a monster. He was just a guy fighting for what he wanted. And James? Well, James learned the hardest lesson of all. Sometimes loving someone means accepting that you're not what's best for them. But here's what gets me about this whole story. It's not really about romance at all. It's about the promises we make when we think we have forever, and what happens when forever runs out. It's about the difference between loving someone and being in love with the idea of them. James and Joanna spent 20 years building a foundation that crumbled the moment it was tested. They assumed their connection was unbreakable because it had never been broken. They confused familiarity with compatibility, shared history with shared future. Kevin, for all his scheming, understood something James didn't. Love isn't a birthright. Just because you've known someone longer doesn't mean you deserve them more. Every day, you have to choose each other. Every day, you have to prove you're worth choosing. The tragedy is that by the time James learned this lesson, it was too late to apply it with Joanna. But it wasn't too late to apply it with someone else. Think about your own relationships for a minute. How many times have you taken someone for granted because they'd always been there? How many times have you assumed that love was enough, without putting in the work to nurture it? How many times have you confused comfort with compatibility? James's story is a masterclass in what happens when we stop fighting for what we want and start expecting it to be handed to us. Joanna chose Kevin not because she loved James less, but because Kevin made her feel like she was making a choice rather than following a predetermined path. And maybe that's the real lesson here. Love isn't about destiny or soulmates or any of that fairy tale nonsense. It's about two people choosing each other every single day, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. James got his happy ending, but it wasn't the one he'd planned at 20. Sometimes the best thing that can happen to you is having your original plan fall apart completely. Sometimes losing everything is the only way to find out who you really are. So here's my question for you. Are you James, taking love for granted because it's always been there? Are you Joanna, making practical choices that ignore the heart? Or are you Kevin, fighting so hard for something that you lose sight of whether it's worth having? Whatever your answer, remember this: the story you're living right now is being written one choice at a time. Make sure you're writing the ending you actually want to live with. Because 7 years from now, when you're looking back at the promises you made today, you'll either thank yourself for keeping them or forgive yourself for breaking them. But you won't be able to pretend they never mattered. If this story hit you as hard as it hit me, smash that like button and let me know in the comments. Have you ever had a James and Joanna moment in your life? And if you want more stories that'll make you question everything you thought you knew about love and life, hit that subscribe button because trust me, we're just getting started. Until next time, remember, the best love stories aren't the ones where everything works out perfectly. They're the ones where people choose each other despite everything that could go wrong. Make sure you're living in one of those.